Close the blast doors, check your Geiger counter, and get comfortable. You're about to listen to the most comprehensive collection of wasteland knowledge ever recorded. From the secrets of the Great War to the hidden code in the Mojave, we have 200 facts to help you drift off into a deep, radiation-free sleep. But before we seal the vault for the night, I want to know where our signal is reaching. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments below. Now, turn down the lights. The wasteland is waiting. The history of the Fallout universe begins with a divergence from our own timeline, a split that occurred shortly after World War II, creating a retro-futuristic world where the transistor was never invented in 1947, leading to a reliance on vacuum tubes and atomic energy that persisted for over a century. The Great War, the cataclysmic event that defines the setting, began and ended on Saturday, October 23rd, 2077, a date etched into every terminal and holotape found across the wasteland. While the build-up to the conflict took decades of resource wars and diplomatic failures, the actual nuclear exchange that destroyed modern civilization lasted only 2 hours, a fleeting moment of fire that silenced the world. Before the bombs fell, the United States had reorganized its 50 states into 13 Commonwealths in 1969, a political restructuring intended to better manage the nation's dwindling resources. Yet this action only served to increase tensions and civil unrest. The iconic Vault Boy mascot, with his blonde hair and thumbs-up gesture, was not merely giving a sign of approval, but is rumored to be demonstrating a safety test for nuclear detonations. If the mushroom cloud is smaller than your thumb held at arm's length, you are in a safe zone, but if it is larger, you are in the radiation danger zone. Vault-Tec Corporation, the builders of the underground bunkers designed to save humanity, never truly intended to save the population, but rather constructed the vaults as a series of elaborately cruel social experiments commissioned by the Enclave to test human resilience for a planned colonization of other planets. Of the 122 public vaults commissioned by the U.S. government, only 17 were actually designed to function as control vaults, where the inhabitants would be safe and the equipment would work as advertised. Vault 13, the home of the Vault Dweller in the original Fallout game, was intended to stay closed for 200 years to study the effects of prolonged isolation. But this experiment was interrupted when the water purification chip failed in 2161. The water chip itself is a specific piece of technology utilizing vacuum tube electronics, and without it, the Vault-S recycling system could not produce potable water from waste, threatening the cycle of life underground. The currency of the wasteland, the bottle cap, was originally adopted by the hub merchants in California because the technology to manufacture and paint bottle caps had been lost to time, making them difficult to counterfeit and inherently limited in supply. One bottle of Nuka-Cola, the nation's most popular pre-war beverage, contains 120% of the recommended daily allowance of sugar, a fact that contributed to the general poor health of the American population even before the radiation took hold. The inventor of Nuka-Cola, John Caleb Bradburton, was a brilliant chemist who combined 17 fruit essences to create the distinct taste, and his legacy survived the war in a very literal sense, as his living head was preserved in a jar within the Nuka World amusement park for over 200 years. Nuka-Cola Quantum, the glowing blue variant of the soda, achieved its luminescence through the addition of a mild radioactive isotope called strontium-90, a risky additive that caused urine to glow in consumers, a side effect the marketing department listed as a feature rather than a health hazard. The Brotherhood of Steel, the techno-religious organization that hoards technology, was founded by Captain Roger Maxson. a member of the U.S. Army who deserted his post at the Mariposa military base days before the Great War, after discovering the government was testing the forced evolutionary virus on human prisoners. The forced evolutionary virus, or FEV, was originally designed as a pan-immunity virion project to cure all diseases, but it mutated to increase muscle mass and brain function in some subjects while destroying the intelligence of others, eventually leading to the creation of the supermutants. The Master, the primary antagonist of the first Fallout, was once a human named Richard Moreau, who was exiled from the hub for murder, and later fell into a vat of FEV at the Mariposa base, fusing with computer equipment and other biomass to become a grotesque entity. The Master's plan for the Unity was based on the belief that supermutants were the superior race because they were immune to radiation and disease. Yet he failed to realize that the FEV renders its subjects sterile, meaning his perfect race was doomed to extinction from the start. In the Mojave Wasteland, the enigmatic Mr. House, ruler of New Vegas, is actually Robert House, the founder of Robco Industries, who was born on June 25, 2020, and used his genius to predict the timing of the Great War with mathematical precision. Mr. House spent vast fortunes to install laser defense grids around Las Vegas, destroying most of the nuclear missiles targeted at the city, thereby preserving the lights of the Vegas Strip, while the rest of the world fell into darkness. The Platinum Chip, the item that drives the conflict in Fallout New Vegas, is a high-density data storage device containing the operating system upgrades needed to update Mr. House's Securitron Army 2 Mark II software. The Pip-Boy, the personal information processor worn on the wrist of Vault Dwellers, was manufactured by Robco Industries, and the Model 3000 seen in Fallout 3 and New Vegas features a biometric lock that makes it nearly impossible to remove without specialized tools or the death of the wearer. The older model, the Pip-Boy 2000, appeared in the first two Fallout games and was a handheld tablet device, rather than a wrist-mounted unit, reflecting the miniaturization of technology over the differing game generations. Dogmeat, the loyal canine companion found in multiple Fallout games, is a direct homage to the dog named Blood from the 1975 film A Boy and His Dog, a movie that served as a major aesthetic inspiration for the entire Fallout series. In Fallout 4, the German Shepherd used to model and voice Dogmeat was a real dog named River, who belonged to one of the game S-level designers, and her barks and whines were recorded to ensure authentic canine behavior. The Fat Man Tactical Nuclear Catapult is a shoulder-mounted weapon that launches mini-nukes, and the distinct ringing bell sound heard when it is fired is actually the lunch bell from the Bethesda Softworks office cafeteria. The mini-nuke ammunition is essentially a football-sized fission device, and the weapon's design is based on the real-world M28 or M29 Davy Crockett weapon system, a recoilless gun developed by the U.S. during the Cold War to fire nuclear projectiles. Fallout 3's Capital Wasteland is a scale recreation of Washington, D.C., and the pile of rubble blocking the entrance to the White House is a deliberate design choice because the developers decided that in a direct nuclear strike, the White House would have been completely vaporized, leaving nothing to explore. The Washington Monument in the game is structurally compromised, and if you look closely at the Brotherhood of Steel's citadel, which is built into the ruins of the Pentagon, you can see that the pre-war structure was hit directly, collapsing the center rings. The mysterious stranger, a figure who appears randomly in VA tests to assist the player, has no clear backstory. But in Fallout New Vegas, you can find the Lonesome Drifter, who implies that his father was a mysterious man who vanished as quickly as he appeared, suggesting the stranger may have left a family behind. The VA test system itself, or Vault-Tec assisted targeting system, slows down time to allow for precision aiming, a gameplay mechanic designed to emulate the turn-based combat of the original isometric Fallout games within a real-time shooter engine. The iconic power armor of the franchise, specifically the T-51B model, was the pinnacle of pre-war protection, constructed with a polylaminate composite shell capable of absorbing over 2,500 joules of kinetic impact. The T-45D power armor came before the T-51B and was the first model successfully deployed into combat in 2077 to repel the Chinese invasion of Anchorage, Alaska, though it had significant mobility issues and relied on heavy fusion cells. The Enclave developed their own advanced power armor after the war, known as the Advanced Power Armor, or X-01, which utilized lightweight ceramic composites to offer superior protection without the bulk of the pre-war models. The currency of the new California Republic is the NCR dollar, which was originally backed by gold stored in Reading, but after the Brotherhood of Steel destroyed the gold reserves during the NCR Brotherhood War, the currency became fiat money, significantly devaluing it compared to the bottle cap. The Legion, the antagonist faction in New Vegas, utilizes coins called denarius and aureus, which are minted from silver and gold respectively, utilizing the actual metal value as currency in a return to ancient Roman economic standards. Caesar, the leader of the Legion, was originally a follower of the Apocalypse named Edward Sallow, who found a book on the history of the Roman Empire and decided to use its brutal tactics to unify the warring tribes of the Wasteland. Harold is a mutant who appears in Fallout 1, 2, and 3, and his mutation is unique because a tree, which he named Bob, began growing out of his head. By the time the player finds him in Fallout 3, the tree has grown so large that Harold is rooted in place, worshipped as a god by a cult called the Tree Minders. The GEIC, or Garden of Eden Creation Kit, was a terraforming device issued to select vaults containing seeds, soil replicators, and cold fusion power generators designed to revitalize the wasteland and make the surface habitable again. Vault 8 used their GEK successfully to create Vault City, a high-tech settlement in the Nevada wasteland that maintained a clean, sterile environment amidst the chaos of the outside world. In Fallout 4, the protagonist is known as the Sole Survivor, and they are unique in the series because they are a pre-war human who survived by being cryogenically frozen in Vault 111, meaning they have first-hand memories of the world before the bombs fell. The cryopods in Vault 111 were monitored remotely by Vault-Tec, and the staff in the vault were never given the all-clear signal to leave, leading to a mutiny and their eventual death, leaving the frozen residents unattended for over 2 centuries. The Institute, the shadowy scientific organization in the Commonwealth, was founded by the survivors of the Commonwealth Institute of Technology, or CIT, who retreated underground and continued to advance science without ethics, eventually creating the synthetic humans known as synths. Generation 1, synths are purely robotic with skeletal frames. Generation 2 synths have plastic skin and more advanced AI, but Generation 3 synths are biologically indistinguishable from humans, created using modified DNA to possess bones, muscles, and blood, making them perfect infiltrators. The Railroad is an underground organization dedicated to freeing synths, believing that any machine capable of independent thought and the desire for freedom deserves the same rights as a human being. The Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4 is led by Arthur Maxson, a direct descendant of the original founder Roger Maxson, who reunited the splintered factions of the Brotherhood and returned them to a more militaristic and zealous doctrine. The Prydwen, the massive airship used by the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4, was constructed using parts scavenged from the destroyed Enclave mobile base crawler at Adams Air Force Base. symbolizing the Brotherhood's triumph over their technological rivals. The fuel required to keep the Prydwen aloft is immense, requiring constant refueling runs by vertibirds, and the ship is filled with hydrogen, making it a floating bomb if its armored plating is ever breached. Super mutants in the capital Wasteland are different from those on the West Coast. The East Coast mutants were created in Vault 87 using a different strain of FEV, which results in them continuing to grow larger as they age, eventually becoming the massive behemoths. The centaurs found accompanying super mutants are horrific chimeras created by tossing dogs, humans, and other animals into FEV vats together, resulting in a twisted mass of limbs and heads that moves with a disturbing, slithering gait. The Yao Guai, the mutated bears of the wasteland, get their name from the Mandarin Chinese words for monster or demon, likely named by the descendants of Chinese internment camp prisoners who survived the war. The Deathclaw, the apex predator of the wasteland, was not a random mutation but a genetic experiment created by the U.S. military before the war, modifying the DNA of the Jackson S chameleon to create a stealthy, high-speed shock trooper for close-quarters combat. Deathclaws are blind, but have an acute sense of smell and hearing, and they are known to be intelligent enough to mimic human voices in very rare, specific mutations seen in Fallout 2. The radiation in the Fallout universe does not behave like real-world radiation. Instead of strictly causing cellular death and cancer, it operates on science fiction logic, causing gigantism in insects like radroaches, bloatflies, and rad scorpions. Rad scorpions are descended from the Emperor Scorpion, and despite their immense size, they have retained the ability to burrow underground and ambush their prey, a terrifying adaptation for a creature the size of a small car. The Brahmin, the two-headed cattle of the wasteland, are the primary source of meat and leather, and their double heads are a result of extreme mutation, yet they are surprisingly gentle and are often used as pack animals by caravans. The Tunnel Snakes, a gang in Vault 101, are led by Butch Deloria, and their catchphrase, "Tunnel Snakes Rule," became an internet meme. But their existence highlights the social stagnation of Vault life, where 50-year-old subcultures persist due to lack of outside influence. The sheer number of skeletons found in pairs, or embracing in ruined beds across the wasteland, tells a silent, tragic story of the final moments of millions of people who chose to hold their loved ones as the bombs fell. In Fallout 76, the setting is Appalachia, West Virginia, which was spared the direct impact of nuclear strikes but was devastated by the resulting plague known as the Scorched Plague, a hive mind infection spread by mutated bats called Scorch Beasts. The Scorch Beasts were created by the Enclave in a secret research facility beneath the White Spring Resort, intending to use them as biological weapons to force the DEFCON level to rise, allowing them access to the region's automated nuclear silos. The Mothman, a cryptid from real-world West Virginian folklore, appears in the game as a mutated giant moth that is worshipped by the cult of the Mothman, who believe the creature offers protection from the coming apocalypse. The sound of the laser rifle in Fallout 3 in New Vegas is a unique, crackling discharge that was created by sound designers manipulating the recording of a stretched slinky being struck, combined with electrical arcs. The plasma rifle, in contrast, fires superheated bolts of ionized gas that travel slower than laser beams, but deal significantly more damage, melting the flesh of targets into a glowing green pile of goo. Vault 11 represents one of the darkest experiments in the series. The dwellers were told they had to sacrifice one person every year, or the computer would kill everyone. But the twist was that if they refused to kill anyone, the vault would have opened and congratulated them on their humanity tragically. Only 5 survivors remained when they discovered this truth, Vault 108 is filled entirely with clones of a man named Gary, all of whom can only say the word Gary in different intonations, the result of a cloning experiment that degraded the mental faculties of each subsequent copy. Vault 77, which appears in a tie-in comic, involved a single man locked in a vault with a crate of puppets, leading him to lose his mind and become the legendary puppet man of the wastes. The alien blaster is a recurring rare weapon found at crash sites of extraterrestrial spacecraft, confirming that aliens have been monitoring Earth for centuries. And in the Fallout 3 expansion, Mothership Zeta, the player is actually abducted and must fight their way off an alien ship. The Zetans, as the aliens are called, have a biology that is frail compared to humans, but their technology, including dismemberment rays and force fields, is vastly superior to anything created by human science. The Tranquilizer Lane simulation in Fallout 3 places the player in a black and white, idyllic pre-war neighborhood run by the sadistic Dr. Braun, who uses the simulation to torture the trapped residents for his own amusement, resetting their memories after every episode. Dr. Braun was the director of the Vault-Tec preservation program and the creator of the Giekik, making him one of the most brilliant but morally bankrupt minds of the pre-war era. The immense size of the super mutant behemoths allows them to use fire hydrants as clubs and shopping carts as cages to carry their loot or victims on their backs, showcasing their primitive but effective tool use. The Mirelurks are mutated crabs or lobsters protected by thick armored shells, and their face is their only vulnerable point, requiring precision shooting to take them down without wasting ammunition on their carapace. The Mirelurk kings are not crabs at all, but are mutated frogs or snapping turtles that have developed a symbiotic relationship with the Mirelurk colonies, using sonic attacks to stun enemies. The song, "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire," by the Ink Spots, was originally intended to be the theme song for the first Fallout game, but licensing issues prevented its use until Fallout 3, where it became the iconic anthem of the capital wasteland. The music of Fallout is strictly stuck in the era between the 1930s and the late 1950s, reinforcing the cultural stagnation of the timeline, where the counterculture revolution of the 60s never happened. The terminal hacking minigame involves selecting words from a list based on their likeness to the password, a puzzle system that requires logic and deduction, representing the character's intelligence and computer literacy. Unlocking locks with bobby pins is a tactile minigame where the player must carefully rotate a screwdriver while applying tension to the pin, a mechanic that rewards patience and a gentle touch, much like the process of falling asleep. Cazadores in Fallout. New Vegas are mutated tarantula hawk wasps created in the Big Empty Research Facility, and they are widely considered the most annoying enemy in the game due to their erratic flight patterns and potent poison that drains health rapidly. The Night Stalkers are another Big Empty creation, a hybrid of coyotes and rattlesnakes, possessing the fur and body of a canine with the fangs and rattle of a snake, and they are known to hunt in packs. The survivalist in the Honest Hearts DLC is a man named Randall Clark, whose story is told entirely through terminal entries found in caves. He survived the bombs, lived for decades in Zion National Park, and secretly protected a group of children who had escaped from a vault, becoming a mythical father in the caves figure to them. Randall Clark S. Rifle, the Survivalist S. Rifle, is a unique weapon chambered in 12.7mm rounds, and the stock has the word "stop" carved into it, a message to the chaotic world he inhabited. The town of Megaton in Fallout 3 is built inside a crater around an undetonated nuclear bomb, and the settlers used airplane parts from a nearby airfield to construct their walls and homes. giving the town a scrap metal fortress aesthetic. The Children of Atom cult worships the bomb in the center of Megaton, believing that each atomic mass contains a universe and that nuclear detonation is an act of creation, not destruction. The concept of ghouls describes humans who were exposed to massive amounts of radiation but did not die. Instead, their skin rotted away, and their lifespans were extended indefinitely, essentially making them zombies with their human intellect intact, although some eventually go feral. Feral ghouls have lost their higher brain functions due to the deterioration of their brains from radiation, reducing them to animalistic instinct and aggression, causing them to attack anything that is not a ghoul. Glowing ones are ghouls who have absorbed so much radiation that they emit a visible green light and can release bursts of radiation to heal other nearby ghouls, making them dangerous commanders of feral hordes. The layout of the Fallout 1 world map was based on the actual geography of Southern California. But because the developers drove around the area to take notes, the distances are scaled to travel time by car rather than walking, making the wasteland feel incredibly vast. The Hub, a major trading city in the first game, was the first place where the bottle cap was established as currency, and it became the economic center of the early post-war world. The character of Marcus, a friendly super mutant found in Fallout 2 and New Vegas, was one of the few mutants who retained his intelligence and memories, serving as the sheriff of Broken Hills and later founding the mutant refuge of Jacobstown. The voice of Marcus is provided by actor Michael Dorn, best known for playing Worf in Star Trek, adding a deep, resonant authority to the character's wisdom. In the Fallout universe, the United States annexed Canada prior to the Great War to secure the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline and protect American oil interests, a brutal occupation that is referenced in the opening cinematic of the first game where a soldier executes a Canadian partisan. The resource wars that preceded the nuclear exchange were fought primarily over oil and uranium, as the world's fossil fuel reserves had run dry, leading to the collapse of the European Commonwealth and the invasion of China by U.S. forces. The Vertibird is a distinct tilt-wing aircraft used by the Enclave, and later the Brotherhood of Steel, capable of vertical takeoff and landing, making it the primary means of air transport and close air support in a world where runways are destroyed. The wreck of the Yangtze, a Chinese nuclear submarine, can be found in the harbor of Boston in Fallout 4, still inhabited by its ghoulish captain Zhao, who has spent 200 years regretting his role in launching the missiles that destroyed the city. The Robco Protectron is a slow-moving, bipedal robot originally designed for various service roles, such as police officer, firefighter, and medical assistant, and its glass head dome houses its primary sensors. The SentryBot is a heavily armored military robot that moves on a tripod of wheels and is armed with miniguns and missile launchers, designed for perimeter defense and heavy assault, often overheating after sustained fire. The Assaultron, introduced in Fallout 4, is a fast, agile combat robot with a terrifying laser that charges up in its head, capable of devastating melee attacks and disintegrating enemies at range. Vault-22 in the Mojave Wasteland was an agricultural experiment that went wrong when a fungus designed to increase crop yield mutated and infected the vault dwellers, turning them into spore carriers who lurk in the foliage-choked corridors. The plant monsters in Vault-22 are a reference to the film The Day of the Triffids, reinforcing the classic sci-fi horror themes that permeate the Fallout series. The addictive chem jet was invented by a genius teenager named Myron in Fallout 2, who discovered that the fumes from the dung of Brahmin who had been fed contaminated protein extract had a hallucinogenic and stimulating effect. Mentats are a chem that increases intelligence and perception, appearing as chalky red pills, a direct reference to the human computers known as mentats in Frank Herbert Estune universe. Psycho is a military-grade combat drug that increases damage resistance and aggression, originally developed for U.S. soldiers to make them fearless and more effective in hand-to-hand combat against Chinese stealth troops. The rocket launcher in Fallout 3 and the junk jet in Fallout 4 are weapons that allow the player to load junk items like teddy bears, clipboards, and coffee mugs into a hopper and fire them at lethal velocities, turning the detritus of the old world into ammunition. The railway rifle is a steam-powered weapon that fires railway spikes, which travel with such force that they can pin the limbs of enemies to walls, accompanied by a distinct steam whistle sound effect upon reloading. The karma system in Fallout 3 tracks the player's moral standing, playing a distinct sound effect for good or evil actions, and influencing which companions are willing to travel with you. For example, the Paladin Cross will only join a hero, while Jericho requires a villain. In New Vegas, the karma system is supplemented by the reputation system, which tracks how different factions perceive the player, allowing for a more nuanced world where you can be loved by the NCR, but hated by the Legion. The Hoover Dam is the central strategic point in Fallout New Vegas because it is one of the few remaining sources of massive electrical power and clean water in the American Southwest, making it the key to controlling the region. The battle for Hoover Dam is the climax of the game, where the player's choices determine which flag flies over the dam and the fate of the Mojave for years to come. Liberty Prime is a colossal combat robot, standing 40 feet tall, originally intended to liberate Anchorage, Alaska, but it was never deployed due to power issues until the Brotherhood of Steel restored it in the year 2277. Liberty Prime speaks in patriotic anti-communist slogans while throwing tactical nukes like footballs and firing eye-mounted lasers, representing the ultimate expression of American military excess. The slogan, "War, War Never Changes," usually spoken by Ron Perlman, is the thematic anchor of the series, suggesting that while the weapons and the reasons may shift, the fundamental violent nature of humanity remains constant throughout history. Ron Perlman has narrated the intro for almost every main Fallout game, with the exception of Fallout 4, where the intro is spoken by the male protagonist, and Fallout 76. The mysterious blue flower found in Fallout 4, the hub flower, is one of the ingredients used to make Psycho, and its abundance in the Commonwealth explains why the drug is so prevalent among raiders in the region. The sweet roll is a recurring food item and a running joke in Bethesda games. In Fallout 3, the bully butch tries to steal your sweet roll during your 10th birthday party, establishing a rivalry early on. The Dunwich Building in Fallout 3 and Dunwich Borers in Fallout 4 are locations inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, specifically the Dunwich Horror, and feature supernatural events, flashbacks, and strange obelisks that hint at ancient eldritch gods existing beneath the wasteland. The Krivbekni is a dark tome found in the Point Lookout DLC, involved in a quest that requires the player to destroy the book to prevent a swamp folk ritual, further cementing the occult undertones of the series. The Chinese stealth armor acts like a camouflage suit, bending light around the wearer to make them nearly invisible, a technology that the U.S. military tried desperately to replicate, but could only approximate with the Stealth Boy device. The Stealth Boy is a portable device that generates a modulating refraction field, but prolonged use causes schizophrenia and paranoia, a condition seen in the Nightkin supermutants, who are addicted to using them. Uranium fever is not just a song on the radio, but a real phenomenon in the lore, where prospectors rush to find radioactive materials, often dying from exposure before they could strike it rich. The Pip-Boy-esque Geiger counter ticks rapidly when near radiation, a sound that triggers a Pavlovian response in players to back away or use Radaway, a chemical solution that bonds with radiation particles in the bloodstream and flushes them out. Rad-X is a preventative drug that boosts the body's natural radiation resistance for a short time, essential for exploring glowing seas or reactor chambers. The Republic of Dave is a tiny nation in the capital wasteland consisting of a single family and a voting booth, where Dave acts as president and rigs the elections, serving as a satire of political dictatorships. The Gary Clone Vault, Vault 108, has no overseer, as the original overseer died of cancer shortly after the vault closed, leaving the clones to their own chaotic devices. In Fallout 4, the player can build settlements, a mechanic that allows for the reconstruction of society one shack at a time, scavenging tires, wood, and steel to build beds and water pumps for ragged survivors. The sheer volume of duct tape and wonder glue needed for weapon modifications in Fallout 4 turned these mundane household items into the most valuable loot in the game for crafters. The term ghoul was coined by survivors who saw the irradiated humans and likened them to the flesh-eating monsters of Arabian mythology, though most non-feral ghouls find the term offensive, preferring necrotic post-human. The longest living human in the Fallout universe is likely Lorenzo Cabot, who found an alien artifact in Arabia in the 19th century that granted him immortality and telekinetic powers, keeping him alive for over 400 years. The Pip-Boy Light functionality allows players to navigate dark subways and caves, casting a distinct green, amber, or blue glow depending on the user's interface color settings, creating spooky, dynamic shadows. The skeletons in the Fallout games are not just props. Environment artists place them specifically to tell environmental stories, such as a skeleton in a bathtub with a toaster, indicating a pre-war suicide. The sheer silence of the wasteland is often broken only by the howling wind and the distant gunfire of raiders, creating an atmosphere of isolation that is central to the Fallout experience. The Milky Way is clearly visible in the night sky of the wasteland because the light pollution from modern cities is gone, returning the heavens to their natural, awe-inspiring state. The crashed space station in Fallout 76, known as the Crashed Space Station, is actually the Valiant 11, which fell from orbit after the war and serves as a base for raiders, blending high-tech debris with primitive survivalism. The gold reserves in Vault 79 in Fallout 76 were intended to re-establish the American currency standard, and the vault is guarded by Secret Service agents who have remained at their post for decades. The holotape is a durable data storage medium used throughout the series, resembling a cassette tape, capable of storing audio logs, text data, and even simple video games like Red Menace or Atomic Command. Listening to the voices of the dead on holotapes is a haunting mechanic, allowing players to hear the fear, confusion, and final messages of people who died 200 years ago. The concept of the Big MT, or Big Empty in the Old World Blues DLC, is a crater filled with the most advanced and dangerous science labs in the world, run by floating brains in jars who have lost their sanity and their sense of time. The toaster in the Big Empty is a homicidal appliance that wants to burn the world in nuclear fire, but is limited to heating bread, providing dark comic relief. The Sunset Sarsaparilla Blue Star bottle caps are the subject of a wasteland legend that says collecting enough of them will lead to a magnificent treasure. The tragic truth is that the prize is merely a plastic deputy's badge, and many people murdered each other for nothing. The creator of the Legend of the Star, Festus, is a robotic cowboy who cheerfully congratulates the player after they have likely killed competitors to get the caps. Fallout's aesthetic is often described as ray gun Gothic, a style that incorporates the optimism of the space age with the Art Deco and googie architecture of the mid-20th century. The cars in Fallout are nuclear-powered, specifically by fusion engines like the Chrysalis Corvega, explaining why they explode with a mushroom cloud when shot. The Corvega assembly plant in Fallout 4 is a massive dungeon that shows the scale of pre-war industry, with half-assembled cars still hanging on the conveyor belts. The sheer weight of bottle caps would make them impractical as a currency in reality, but in the game, they are weightless, a necessary abstraction for gameplay convenience. The bobbleheads found in Fallout 3 and 4 are collectibles that permanently boost stats, manufactured by Vault-Tec as promotional items, each depicting the Vault Boy in a different pose, representing a skill or attribute. The loading screens in Fallout 4 feature rotatable 3D models of creatures and items, allowing players to appreciate the detail of a Deathclaw-esque scales or the rust on a pipe pistol while waiting for the world to load. The sheer complexity of the game engine tracks the position of thousands of items, meaning if you drop a teddy bear in a forest and return 100 hours later, it will likely still be there. The game, Fallout. Brotherhood of Steel is a spin-off title, released on PlayStation 2 and Xbox that is widely considered non-canon and ignored by fans and developers alike due to its departure from the lore and tone of the series. The canceled project Van Buren was the original version of Fallout 3, being developed by Black Isle Studios before they were shut down. Many of its ideas, such as the Legion and the Hoover Dam conflict, were later incorporated into Fallout: New Vegas. The Pit is a DLC for Fallout 3 set in the ruins of Pittsburgh, where the industry has returned, but at the cost of slavery, and a disease that turns people into trogs, feral beasts that devolve in the dark. The moral dilemma of the Pit forces the player to choose between freeing the slaves but risking the cure for the disease, or supporting the slavers to ensure the stability of the cure's production. The Lone Wanderer is the protagonist of Fallout 3, who leaves Vault 101 to find their father James, voiced by Liam Neeson, making the emotional core of the story a reversal of the usual save the princess trope. The Courier is the protagonist of New Vegas, who survives a bullet to the head in the opening scene, a testament to their resilience and the catalyst for a revenge story that shapes the future of the Mojave. The distinct sound of the VATS activation is similar to the powering up of a camera flash, signaling the transition to a focused tactical mode. The slow-motion deaths in VATS, often accompanied by the Bloody Mess perk, result in enemies exploding into giblets, a hallmark of the series' over-the-top violence. The alien epoxy found in the mothership, Zeta DLC, is a miraculous substance that can repair any weapon to perfect condition, far surpassing human repair kits. The captain's sidearm is a unique alien weapon that looks like a blaster, but deals varied damage, a prized trophy for collectors. The immense library of Arlington and Fallout 3 is occupied by the Brotherhood of Steel scribes, who are trying to preserve the knowledge of the past, seeing books as the most valuable resource in the world. The contrast between the scribes' reverence for paper and the raiders' use of books as fuel highlights the cultural divide of the wasteland. The unique pistol, that gun, in Fallout. New Vegas is a reference to the blaster used by Rick Deckard in the movie Blade Runner, featuring a distinctive double trigger and revolving cylinder mechanism. The 5.56mm pistol it is based on is a powerful early game weapon for critical hit builds. The sheer variety of raider gangs, from the chem-addicted fiends in Vegas to the organized gunners in the Commonwealth, shows that chaos comes in many forms, some chaotic and some militaristic. The Forged are a raider gang in Fallout 4 who worship fire, and test their recruits by forcing them to stick their hands into molten metal, weeding out the weak. The ambient music of Fallout 1 and 2 was composed by Mark Morgan and is characterized by metallic industrial groans and wind sounds, creating a much bleaker and more desolate atmosphere than the orchestral scores of the later games. Enon Zur composed the music for Fallout 3, New Vegas 4 and 76, introducing a more cinematic and emotional tone that emphasizes the tragedy and majesty of the ruined world. The sound of the wind blowing through the empty power lines is a constant companion to the traveler, a reminder that the energy that once powered the world has long since faded. The rusted hulks of vertibirds and tanks serve as monuments to the battles fought 2 centuries ago, now just terrain for rad roaches to scuttle over. And so, the wasteland breathes, a living ecosystem of mutants, machines, and survivors, all struggling under the same irradiated sun, while the player wanders through the ruins of a future that never was, collecting memories, caps, and stories in a world where war never changes, but the silence of the night offers a moment of peace before the sun rises on another day of survival. The gentle hum of the generator, the soft glow of the vacuum tubes, and the distant, rhythmic ticking of the Geiger counter lull the weary traveler to rest, safe behind the heavy steel door of the vault, drifting into a dream of a world that is green, whole, and quiet. The systems enter standby mode. The terminal screen dims. The wasteland sleeps. The wild wasteland trait. In Fallout, New Vegas is an optional character modification that introduces bizarre and humorous elements to the game, such as finding a skeleton in a refrigerator wearing a fedora, a direct reference to the controversial scene in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Without this trait, the game maintains a more serious tone, but with it, the player can encounter a trio of hostile old ladies named Maud, Muggsy, and Hell's Granny, who attack with rolling pins, referencing the Monty Python Hell's Granny sketch. The Kings of Freeside are a gang that worships a pre-war figure they know only as the King, basing their entire culture, speech, and dress code on a school of impersonation they found, unaware that they are mimicking Elvis Presley. The King himself is voiced by an actual Elvis impersonator, and his cybernetic dog, Rex, has a brain that is deteriorating, requiring the player to find a replacement brain from another dog, which will change the stat bonuses the dog provides. The Sierra Madre Casino, the setting of the Dead Money DLC, is surrounded by a toxic red cloud that slowly kills anyone who enters it, a byproduct of the casino's experimental ventilation system interacting with the local climate. The ultimate lesson of the Sierra Madre is letting go, a theme mechanically enforced by the fact that the vault contains 37 gold bars, each weighing 35 pounds. The player cannot physically carry all the gold and escape the exploding vault before the time runs out, forcing them to leave the wealth behind to survive. In Fallout 4, the USS Constitution is a historic wooden frigate that has been retrofitted with rocket engines by a crew of robots led by Captain Ironsides, a sentry bot with a distinct colonial accent and a pirate hat. The robots are trying to fly the ship to the Atlantic Ocean, but due to calculation errors, they only manage to crash it into a skyscraper, a journey they consider a resounding success. The Silver Shroud is a fictional pre-war radio vigilante, and in Fallout 4, the player can find the costume and submachine gun used by the character. Wearing the costume unlocks unique dialogue options, where the player character speaks in the dramatic, booming voice of the Shroud, terrifying, confused raiders. The radio plays of the Silver Shroud heard on the Pip-Boy are fully voiced dramas that provide entertainment and lore, mimicking the style of The Shadow, and other pulp heroes of the 1930s. Swan, a unique super-mutant behemoth found in the Boston Common Pond, disguises himself as a pile of garbage on a swan boat, only rising to attack when the player gets too close. Swan was originally a low-level institute worker named Edgar Swan, who was caught stealing cigarettes and was used as a test subject for a specific strain of FEV, writing notes in a diary detailing his slow loss of intelligence until he could only write his name. The location known as Covenant in the Commonwealth is a safe, walled town that forces visitors to take the safe test to enter, a series of psychological questions designed to detect synths. The test is a direct replication of the Voight-Kampff test from the movie Blade Runner, used to identify replicants, further cementing the game's homage to classic sci-fi cinema. Nick Valentine is a prototype Generation 2 synth with the memories of a pre-war detective who volunteered for brain scanning. Because he was thrown out by the Institute, he operates a detective agency in Diamond City, bridging the gap between man and machine with his old-world charm. His mechanical hand and torn face, revealing the metal skull beneath, serve as a constant reminder of his artificial nature. Yet he is arguably one of the most human characters in the game. The mysterious Vim Pop Factory in the Far Harbor DLC reveals that there was a fierce corporate rivalry between Nuka-Cola and the local Maine soda brand, Vim, which tasted like fish and cabbage, according to some terminals. The Vim power armor paint job found in the factory makes the player look like a walking billboard for the beverage, blending red and green colors that match the coastal vegetation. The Red Death in Far Harbor is hyped up by the local sailors as a legendary, ship-sinking monster that glows with a blinding red light, but when the player finally confronts it, it turns out to be a tiny, harmless Mirelurk hatchling with glowing red eyes, subverting the expectation of a boss fight. The mariner who sends you on the quest is so embarrassed by the truth that you can agree to lie to the town and claim it was a massive beast to preserve their dignity. Vault 75, located beneath Malden Middle School, was a genetics experiment where children were inducted into a brutal training program to create the ultimate soldiers. Those who graduated were harvested for their genes, while the strongest were recruited into the Vault science team to continue the cycle. This grim reality is discovered through keycards and terminals, as the Vault is now occupied by the Gunners, a mercenary group that likely originated from the survivors of this very experiment. The sheer durability of the vertibird is often questioned by players because, in Fallout 4 gameplay, they are prone to crashing when shot by small arms fire. This is actually a result of the level scaling system, where the enemy's damage output outpaces the vehicle's fixed health pool. In the lore, however, the vertibird is a flying tank, with armored plating capable of withstanding anti-aircraft flak. Grognok, the barbarian, is a fictional comic book character in the Fallout universe, a parody of Conan the Barbarian, and collecting his comics grants the player permanent bonuses to melee damage. In Fallout 4, you can find the Grognok costume and his axe, allowing you to roleplay as the character, which is acknowledged by certain NPCs who comment on your lack of clothing. The Mesmetron in Fallout 3 is a weapon used by the Slavers of Paradise Falls to stun victims and fit them with explosive collars. The weapon works by scrambling the target's brainwaves, sometimes causing their heads to spontaneously explode if the frequency is too high. The explosive collar is a terrifying control method that beeps faster as the slave moves away from the slaver's radio frequency, detonating if they try to escape. In Fallout 2, if the player has a low enough intelligence stat, they can converse fluently with Tor, a simple-minded Brahmin herder, in a unique dialogue dialect that normal intelligence characters cannot understand. This low intelligence run changes almost all dialogue in the early games, turning the protagonist into a lovable brute who stumbles through the plot. The pint-sized slasher mask found in Fallout 3 is a reference to a pre-war urban legend about a child serial killer in a clown mask, adding a layer of slasher movie horror to the setting. The Tranquility Lane simulation allows the player to don this mask and terrorize the virtual residents, indulging in the dark fiction of the pre-war world. The Prydwen airship is named after the legendary ship of King Arthur, keeping with the Brotherhood of Steel's knightly themes and naming conventions. The ship is anchored at the Boston Airport, a location chosen because it provides the flat, open space needed for the vertibirds to land and take off, as well as the scrap metal needed for repairs. The concept of pipe weapons in Fallout 4 illustrates the desperation of the wasteland. These guns are handmade from copper pipes, wooden blocks, and rusty springs, firing standard ammunition through unrifled barrels. They are the most common weapons found in the Commonwealth, reinforcing the idea that pre-war manufactured weapons are rare relics. The Brotherhood of Steel's slogan, Ad Victoriam, is Latin for to victory, a phrase that replaced the older, more isolationist creeds of the West Coast chapters, signifying a shift toward active conquest. The Outcasts in Fallout 3 were a splinter group of the Brotherhood who wore red and black armor and believed that the main chapter had lost its way by helping the locals instead of just hoarding technology. The mysterious serum found in the Cabot House questline is derived from the blood of the father, Lorenzo Cabot, and grants significant strength and radiation resistance, effectively stopping the aging process. The quest presents a moral dilemma: kill the father to stop a potential threat, but lose the supply of immortality serum, or free him and unleash a chaotic entity upon the world. Vault 81 is one of the few vaults that is still functioning as a healthy, isolated society. It was intended to be a testing ground for universal cures to diseases, but the original overseer sabotaged the experiment to save the residents, sealing the scientists in the secret section of the vault where they died of old age. Curie, a companion in Fallout 4, is a Miss Nanny robot, modified by these scientists who developed a unique personality and desire to contribute to medical science. The Railroad uses a secret code system called RailSign, which involves marking locations with simple white-painted symbols to indicate danger, safe houses, or supply caches, a system historically inspired by the hobo signs of the Great Depression. The player can learn to read these signs to find hidden loot caches throughout the city ruins. The alien animatronic in the Nuka World DLC is part of a ride, but uses a real, working alien blaster, implying that Nuka-Cola Corporation had access to alien technology before the war and used it for entertainment. The Nuka Girl rocket suit is a retro futuristic outfit that allows the wearer to breathe underwater, a feature originally intended for spacewalks in the fictional promotional material. The sound of using a stim pack is a distinct pneumatic hiss followed by a sharp intake of breath from the character, a sound design choice that conveys immediate relief and chemical stabilization. Stim packs heal broken limbs instantly in normal mode, but in survival mode, they act slowly and cause dehydration, forcing the player to manage their thirst along with their health. The endgame slideshows of Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas are narrated by Ron Perlman and change based on the player's specific actions, detailing the fate of every town and faction visited. This creates a sense of profound consequence, as the player learns that their heroism might have saved a town only for it to fall into anarchy years later due to a power vacuum. The quest, Come Fly With Me, in New Vegas involves a cult of ghouls who believe a great journey awaits them in the stars. They attempt to repair rockets to fly to a radioactive paradise, and the player can sabotage the rockets to make them crash or adjust the trajectory to help them reach their destination. The music in this quest includes Ride of the Valkyries, adding an operatic grandeur to the absurd sight of rusty rockets launching from a scrapyard. And finally, the very existence of the Fallout games serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of civilization and the enduring stubbornness of life, reminding us that even after the end of the world, people will still find reasons to fight, to love, to build, and to dream. As the screen fades to black and the credits roll, the haunting melody of a lone trumpet echoes across the digital wasteland, leaving the player with the silence of the room and the comfort of a story well told, ready for sleep.